Good afternoon. I thought I'd take a break and get some fresh air. You know, it's pretty hot and tedious work getting a newspaper ready for printing. Did you know that the first newspapers were used as political soapboxes? Well, that's right. You know, a newspaper's political slant all depended on who happened to own the paper. Back then, the papers carried long communications that were filled with innuendo and contemptuous insinuation. And they weren't refused by the publisher. That's because the weapons of the press were personal attacks that were intended to bring the opposing candidate into disfavor. Why, the first newspaper in Medina Village, the first in the county for that matter, was a Democratic and anti-Masonic journal known as the Ohio Free Press and Medina County Advertiser. It was founded back in May or June of 1832, and it was published once a week on Tuesdays at an annual rate of $2 or $2.50 at the close of the year. Now mind you, county produce and poor wood, taken at market price, well, that was just as good as hard cash back then. The general appearance of the newspapers in and around the county were all very much the same. The most noticeable characteristic was the amount of attention given to state and national affairs, with an almost complete lack of local news. Well, this is because people either knew the local news, or they ended up hearing it from their neighbors anyway. And of course, the foreign news, well, that was carried in the hometown paper. The addresses of the president and the governor well, they were given in full, and if they were quite lengthy, they were continued through several editions. Now, my favorite was the Poets' Corner. This section was sacredly reserved for choice selections of the day. And of course, being in this area, well, there was always a column dedicated to the agricultural department. Now, as you can see, the newspaper was only one page. It was about 19 inches across and 26 inches long, with about 5 or 6 columns wide. But back to the Free Press. Now, that paper really didn't meet with any great deal of success. And the anti-Masonic sentiment that it carried, it didn't do much to gather support for party formation. Thus, the growing Whig sentiment really began to gain ground and acceptance in and around Medina, despite the presence of a Democratic journal. The fire in 1837, which destroyed its office, and that became that newspaper's misfortune, and it was never revived. But that's where I come in. My name is J.S. Carpenter, and in 1835, I arrived in Medina Village from New York. I held very, very strong anti-slavery views, and I was an earnest Whig. I founded the Constitutionalist. It was a newspaper which did much to foster and organize the growing Whig sentiment in this area. And although the newspaper was quite successful, my interest in politics led me to run for state representative in 1839. And once elected, I continued on in public life for many, many years, and of course passed the newspaper on to new owners. Now, the Constitutionalist, it went through several owners and name changes over the years, but it always maintained strict allegiance to the Whig Party up until about 1853. In 1853, a gentleman named John Spear, along with growing public sentiment, began to shift the paper's allegiance from the Whig Party to the newly formed Republican wing, and thus changed the name of the newspaper to the Gazette. The office was established at this very spot here on the Medina Square. And if you're ever taking a casual stroll around our city green, take a look this way. But look up to the top of the building where you'll see carefully set in the brickwork, the Gazette. And although the paper, of course, changed hands throughout the years, it continued to flourish, despite the fact that it too had its offices destroyed in the Great Medina Fire of 1870. Now mind you everyone, it is the only paper of early Medina that continues today. Now near the turn of the century, the newspaper began to carry more personalized stories that were intended to capture the memories of the early Medina citizens. And along with that, we began to see pages dedicated to carrying advertisements. This March 25th, 1870 edition is a good example of that. This advertisement reads as follows. The voice of the people is unanimous in praise of one thing, and that is Morris's Indian Root Pills, the best known remedy for almost any affliction known to the human race. They go to work directly on the blood, the stomach, and the bowels. Take an occasional dose of these pills, and you will not be sick. I only publish what they pay. And speaking of which, look at the time. I've got to get back to work setting time. I have a newspaper to get out. But remember everyone, keep reading your hometown newspaper. I thank you, and good day.
All right.